She woke up in a stranger's bed, her head pounding like a war drum, every muscle aching as if she'd run all night. Silk sheets tangled around her body, and the air carried a scent, masculine, intoxicating, utterly unfamiliar. Panic clawed at her throat as fragments of memory surfaced. A crowded tavern, a heated glance across the room, then nothing but black void. And there, rising from the bed's edge, was the most dangerous man in the kingdom, the Alpha King, his amber eyes fixed on her with a mix of regret and fire. What Helena didn't know yet was that this forgotten night wasn't just passion. It was the spark that would ignite a war, with a twist that would change everything she thought she knew about her own heart. Helena's eyelids fluttered open to a canopy of deep crimson velvet, embroidered with golden wolves. Her mouth tasted of stale wine and regret, and as she shifted, a sharp twinge between her thighs made her freeze. Naked. Completely naked in a bed that wasn't hers. The room spun for a moment. Opulent stone walls, flickering hearth embers, a massive four-poster bed carved with intricate runes. This wasn't the modest inn chamber she'd rented in the capital's underbelly. This was God's. This was the royal palace. Her heart slammed against her ribs like a caged bird. She bolted upright, clutching the sheets to her chest, and that's when she saw him. King Hugo stood by the window, his broad back to her, dressed only in loose trousers that hung low on his hips. His golden hair, messy as if from restless sleep or something more carnal, caught the light, and the muscles of his shoulders tensed under her gaze. He turned slowly, those piercing amber eyes locking onto hers, and Helena felt a jolt. He was beautiful in a lethal way, all sharp jaw and scarred torso, the alpha aura radiating from him like heat from a forge. But there was no warmth in his expression. "You shouldn't be awake yet," he said, his voice low and rough. He crossed the room, towering over the bed, and Helena instinctively shrank back, her mind racing through the fog. Last night, she'd come to the capital seeking work as a healer, her satchel of herbs and potions her only possession after fleeing her village's plague. A tavern stop for ale to steady her nerves. Eyes meeting his across the smoky room. No, that couldn't be right. The Alpha King didn't mingle with common folk. Did he? "What happened?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt, though her cheeks burned with humiliation. "Why am I here? In your bed?" Hugo's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking there as he raked a hand through his hair. "You don't remember." He glanced toward the door, as if expecting intruders, then leaned closer, his scent enveloping her, pine, smoke, and something primal that stirred an unwelcome heat in her core. "No one can know you slept here. If word gets out, it could destroy us both." "Destroy? I don't even know you." Helena's thoughts whirled. Had she been drugged? Seduced? Worse? She scanned the room for her clothes, spotting them crumpled by the hearth, her simple wool dress and cloak. No signs of force, but the ache in her body told a story her mind couldn't recall. Shame warred with anger. She wasn't some tavern wench, but a skilled herbalist who'd clawed her way through loss and hardship. Hugo sighed sharply, his eyes flickering with something like guilt. Or was it desire? He grabbed a robe from a nearby chair and tossed it to her, averting his gaze as she wrapped it around herself. "Last night, you approached me in the tavern, said you had information about a threat to the throne. We talked, drank. Things escalated." His words were clipped, evasive, and Helena's instincts told her he was hiding something. She wasn't a spy. She barely knew court gossip beyond whispers of the king's ruthless rule and his endless search for a mate to secure his line. "Why can't I remember?" she pressed, swinging her legs over the bed's edge, ignoring the dizziness. Her bare feet hit the cold stone floor, grounding her. "Did you do something to me?" His eyes darkened, a growl rumbling low in his chest. "I would never harm you, but there are forces at play here you don't understand. Get dressed. I'll have a guard escort you out through the servants' passages. Forget this happened, for your sake." Helena stood and met his stare head-on. She wasn't one to cower. Life had taught her resilience. But beneath the defiance, a spark ignited. His presence pulled at her, like an invisible thread tugging her closer. "If it's so dangerous, why let it happen at all? You're the king. You could have anyone." Hugo's hand shot out, gripping her arm, firm enough to send a shiver through her. His touch was electric, memories teasing at the edges, laughter in a shadowed booth, his lips brushing her ear, a desperate kiss that tasted of forbidden fire. "Because," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "In that moment, I couldn't stop myself, and neither could you." He released her abruptly, turning away, but not before she saw the conflict in his eyes. Helena's pulse thundered. What threat had she mentioned? Why him, of all men? And why did his nearness make her yearn for more? As she gathered her clothes, the mystery coiled tighter, promising dangers she couldn't yet see. Helena's fingers trembled as she snatched her dress from the floor. She turned her back to Hugo, because looking at him made the room feel too small, the air too thick. The robe slipped from her shoulders as she pulled the chemise over her head, then the dress, lacing it with jerky movements. Every tug of the ties sent another flash, calloused fingers undoing those same laces, a low chuckle against her throat, the scrape of teeth that hadn't quite broken skin. She squeezed her eyes shut until the images faded. Hugo hadn't moved. He stood with his arms crossed, watching her with the stillness of a predator deciding whether to pounce or retreat. When she finally faced him again, fully clothed, he held out a small leather pouch, her own, the one she kept tied at her belt. The contents clinked softly, vials of dried herbs, a knife, the few coins she hadn't yet spent. "You dropped this last night," he said, "in the corridor outside the tavern." She took it carefully without touching his fingers. "Convenient that you kept it. I wasn't going to leave it for anyone to find." His tone was flat, but there was an undercurrent she couldn't place. "The servants' passage is behind the tapestry, third panel from the left. Follow it straight. It opens near the outer stables. There's a horse saddled and waiting. Take it and ride out before the morning watch changes." Helena stared at him. "You're giving me a horse? You're no prisoner." He met her gaze without flinching. "But you're also no longer invisible. If someone saw you enter the palace, or worse, saw us, together, questions will be asked. Questions neither of us can afford." She wanted to argue, to demand the full truth, but the pounding in her head had dulled to a steady throb, and the urgency in his voice was real. She nodded once and moved toward the tapestry he'd indicated. Her hand brushed the fabric and she paused. Hugo stepped closer, too close. "Helena." The sound of her name in his mouth sent a shiver down her spine. Had she told him her name? He must have read the question on her face. "You told me last night," repeated it like a vow when I asked who I was holding. Heat flooded her cheeks. She refused to look at him. "I don't make vows to strangers." "You did last night." His voice dropped, softer now, almost pained. "And I made one back." She whipped around. "What vow?" For a heartbeat, he looked like he might answer, might give her the peace that would make all of this make sense. But then his expression shuddered. "Go, before I change my mind about letting you leave." His words stung more than they should have. She lifted her chin and pushed through the tapestry without another word. The passage was narrow, damp, lit only by the occasional slit of gray dawn filtering through arrow loops. Her boots echoed too loudly on the worn stone. She forced herself to step lighter, heart hammering with every turn. The air grew colder, carrying the faint smell of hay and horse. When the passage finally opened into a small alcove near the stables, she almost stumbled into the open. A stable boy, no older than 16, stood holding the reins of a sturdy bay mare, saddled and ready. The boy's eyes widened when he saw her emerge from the hidden door, but he said nothing, only bowed his head and handed her the reins. "His Majesty said to ride west," the boy muttered. "Past the river ford. Don't stop until you're clear of the city walls." Helena took the reins, fingers numb. "Thank you." The boy glanced nervously, toward the palace towers, then back at her. "He also said, if anyone asks, you were never here." She mounted in one fluid motion. Years of riding alone through bandit country had made her quick, and nudged the mare forward. The horse moved eagerly, hooves muffled on the straw-strewn path that led to a side gate. A single guard stood there, young and bored-looking. He barely glanced at her as he swung the gate open, as though women on royal horses slipped out of the palace every dawn. Maybe they did. She didn't know the real Hugo. The city streets were just beginning to stir, vendors rolling carts, shutters creaking open, the first thin smoke rising from chimneys. Helena kept her hood up, her gaze forward. The ache between her thighs had faded to a dull throb, but the confusion hadn't. Why her? And why did the memory of Hugo's touch feel like something she'd been waiting for her whole life? She reached the western gate just as the sun cleared the horizon, painting the snow-dusted mountains in pale gold. The guards there waved her through without question, another sign of Hugo's reach, or his haste to be rid of her. She rode faster once the city fell behind, the wind whipping her hood back, stinging her eyes. Only when the palace was a distant white smear against the hills did she slow. Her hand slipped into the pocket of her cloak, fingers closing around the small silver wolf pendant she'd found clutched in her fist when she woke. She hadn't remembered taking it, hadn't even noticed it until she was halfway down the passage, but now she pulled it free. The pendant was heavier than it looked, the wolf carved in exquisite detail, head thrown back in a silent howl. A tiny rune glowed faintly at its center, old blood script, the kind healers used for protection charms. She'd seen it once, years ago, in her mother's book. Her breath caught. This wasn't a trinket. This was royal. The kind of token an alpha gave only when he intended to, claim permanently. Mating tokens were passed down through bloodlines. Losing one was a scandal that could topple alliances. And Hugo had let her walk out of his chambers with it in her hand. Helena's pulse thundered in her ears. She stared at the pendant, willing memory to surface. Nothing came, only the echo of his voice, rough with need. "You're mine tonight. Say it." Had she said it? She closed her fist around the wolf, the metal warming against her palm as though it recognized her. A faint pulse answered from somewhere deep in her chest. Not fear, not anger, but something older. It felt like recognition. The horse tossed her head, sensing the sudden tension in her rider. Helena forced herself to breathe, to think. Whatever had happened last night, whatever Hugo was hiding, she couldn't stay in the capital to find out. The child back in her village still waited. Black vein fever didn't care about kings or forgotten nights. She needed Moonbloom. She needed to disappear. But as she turned the horse west toward the trade roads, the pendant burned hotter against her skin, a steady, insistent rhythm that matched her heartbeat. And somewhere behind her, in the palace she'd just fled, she had the sudden, irrational certainty that Hugo felt it too. She rode faster. The capital shrank behind her, but the mystery didn't. It rode with her, warm, silver, and alive in her hand. Helena kept to the back roads for the rest of the day, avoiding the main trade artery where royal patrols were thickest. By dusk, she reached a small crossroads inn called the Frosted Antler, tucked between pine thickets and a frozen stream. She paid with one of her last coins, asked for the smallest room, and barred the door the moment the innkeeper left. She didn't light a candle. In the thin moonlight spilling through the shutter slats, she sat on the narrow bed and opened her palm. The silver wolf pendant still lay there, cool now, but the warmth it had radiated earlier lingered in her skin like an afterimage. She turned it over, studying the rune again. Bound. Her mother had taught her the old script during long winter nights, when the plague hadn't yet reached their valley. Some charms don't protect, her mother had said once. They bind, and binding is dangerous when the blood doesn't match. Helena's blood was common, healer stock with a touch of old magic that let her sense fevers before they burned hot, that helped wounds close faster under her hands, but nothing royal. Nothing that should make a mating token respond to her, yet it did. She pressed the pendant to her chest, over her heart, and closed her eyes. The world tilted around her. Not a full memory, but a rush of sensation so vivid it stole her breath. A shadowed booth in the tavern, the air thick with pipe smoke and spilled ale. Hugo, in dark leathers, hood drawn low, leaning across the scarred table, amber eyes locked on hers. His voice, quieter than she, remembered from the palace, rough with interest. "You're not afraid of me." "I'm afraid of the child who'll die if I don't get Moonbloom," she'd answered, chin up. "His name is Pip. He's only 7. Fear of kings comes after fear of failing." He'd laughed, surprised, genuine. Then he'd leaned closer. "Tell me again about the poisoners hoarding the herb, names, places, everything." She had. Every rumor she'd gathered from dying patients, every whispered confession. Black vein fever spreading faster than nature allowed, supplies vanishing from apothecaries, caravans intercepted by masked riders who left no survivors, and always the same thread. Someone powerful wanted the fever to burn through the border packs loyal to Hugo, packs that kept his northern frontier secure. Hugo had listened without interrupting, fingers drumming once on the table. "You've walked into something bigger than a dying child, healer." "I didn't walk in," she'd shot back. "I was dragged by necessity." Another laugh, softer. His hand had covered hers on the table, brief, electric. "Then let me drag you out." The vision snapped shut like a door slamming. Helena gasped, eyes flying open. Her heart raced as though she'd run miles. She hadn't just told him about Moonbloom. She'd accused his own court of treason without proof. What came over her last night? She shoved the pendant back into her pocket and stood, pacing the tiny room. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt him. His mouth on her throat, his growl vibrating through her bones, the way he'd said her name like a prayer and a curse. By dawn, she was on the road again, pushing the horse harder than she liked. The next 2 days blurred into cold wind, sparse meals, and the constant prickle of being watched. She never saw anyone, but the hairs on her neck told otherwise. On the 3rd evening, she stopped at a hamlet too small to have a proper inn, just a cluster of thatched roofs and a communal barn where travelers could pay to sleep in the hayloft. She bartered a salve for her supper and a blanket, then climbed the ladder to the loft, burrowing into the straw like a hunted fox. That night, the dreams came properly. She stood in moonlight on a snow-dusted balcony, Hugo behind her, arms caging her against the stone railing. His breath was hot on her neck. "You shouldn't have come to me," he whispered, "but I'm glad you did." She turned in his arms, hands sliding up his chest. I came for Moonbloom, not for you. Liar. His mouth brushed hers, once, twice, teasing. You came because the moment our eyes met across that room, something woke up. Something neither of us can put back to sleep. The kiss deepened, hungry, desperate. His hands roamed, possessive. She arched into him, whispering his name like a secret she'd kept too long. Then pain, sharp, sudden, blooming behind her eyes. Hugo staggered, clutching his temple. The dream fractured. Helena jolted awake in the hayloft, sweating despite the cold. Her fingers were clenched so tightly her nails had drawn blood from her palms. And worse, the pendant was warm again, almost hot, pulsing in perfect rhythm with her heart. She sat up, breathing hard. It wasn't just her dream. She'd felt his confusion, his sudden headache, as though the memory had been hers and his. A floorboard creaked below. Helena froze. Moonlight silvered the ladder. A shadow moved at its base, human-shaped, cloaked. She eased her knife from her boot, slow and silent. The shadow paused, then retreated. Footsteps faded toward the barn door. She waited until silence returned, then slipped down the ladder and out into the night. The yard was empty, snow undisturbed except for a single set of fresh boot prints leading toward the trees. She followed them just far enough to see they veered west, toward the road she planned to take tomorrow. Someone was tracking her. Not a random bandit. They were careful, patient. She returned to the loft, gathered her things, and saddled the horse by starlight. She left a silver coin on the barn door latch, more than the night was worth, and rode into the dark. The next morning she reached Eldenford, a river town big enough to lose herself in. She stabled the horse at a public yard, paid a boy to watch her, and slipped into the market square. Moonbloom was rare, but Eldenford sat on a trade crossroads. If anywhere outside the capital had it, this was the place. She moved through stalls with practiced ease, head down, hood up, asking quiet questions. Most vendors shook their heads. One, an old woman selling dried roots, narrowed her eyes. Moonbloom? She muttered. Last sack went 2 weeks ago, bought by a man in black who paid triple and asked no questions, said it was for the northern sickness. Helena's stomach twisted. Northern sickness was black vein fever. Did he say where he was taking it? The woman shrugged. Didn't ask, didn't care. Gold talks louder than curiosity. Helena bought a small bundle of feverfew instead, useless against black vein, but it steadied her hands, and moved on. She was turning down an alley toward the stables when a voice stopped her cold. Looking for something rare, healer? Lady Larissa stepped from the shadow of a doorway, beautiful and venomous in emerald velvet. Her dark hair was pinned with silver pins, shaped like crescent moons. Her smile was cutting. Helena's hand went to the knife at her belt. I don't know you. But I know you. Larissa glided closer, predatory. Helena of Willowvale, herbalist, savior of dying children, and, very recently, guest in the king's bed. Helena's blood turned to ice. If you're here to threaten me, I'm here to warn you. Larissa's eyes flicked to Helena's pocket, where the pendant lay hidden. Hugo thinks he can erase one reckless night. He can't. Not when you still carry his mark. Helena took a step back. I don't carry anything of his. Larissa laughed softly. The token in your pocket would disagree. Mating pendants don't lie, little healer. They burn when the bond wakes, and yours is burning, isn't it? Helena said nothing. The pendant was in fact warm again, had been since the dream. Larissa circled her slowly. He drank wine that night. So did you. I made sure of it. A subtle weave, Memory silk, spun by a mage who owes me favors. It was supposed to make him forget any indiscretion, make you forget everything, but something in your blood resisted. Old blood, perhaps? A healer's touch of the ancient rites? Helena's mind raced. Poison. Why? Because he's mine. Larissa's voice dropped to a hiss. Betrothed. Promised. The Council needs our alliance to hold the eastern passes. A common-born healer with storm-gray eyes and no title doesn't fit the plan. Helena's jaw tightened as she lied. I remember nothing. But you will. Larissa leaned in, close enough that Helena caught the scent of winter roses and something metallic. The weave is fraying. Dreams bleed through. Touches linger. And that pendant, it's calling him. Every heartbeat you share pulls him closer. If you stay in these lands, he'll find you. And when he does, the court will tear you apart to protect their precious alliances. Helena met her gaze without flinching. If you're so confident, why warn me? Why not kill me now? Larissa's smile returned, cold, satisfied. Because dead, you're a martyr. Alive and running, you're a problem that solves itself. Go home, little healer. Cure your village. Forget the king. She turned on her heel and vanished into the crowd. Helena stood frozen for a few long seconds. Then she moved, fast. Back to the stables, past the boy, onto the horse. She rode south this time, not west, toward the hills where moonbloom sometimes grew wild in sheltered ravines. If the black market wouldn't sell, she'd harvest it herself. But as the town fell behind, the pendant flared hot against her thigh. And in the palace, miles away, Hugo woke from the same dream, her body under his, her name on his lips, and snarled into the empty dark. She's running, his wolf growled inside his skull. Find her, before they do. He rose, already reaching for his cloak. The hunt had begun. Helena didn't make it far. She had barely cleared the southern ridge when hoofbeats thundered behind her. Too many, too organized. She urged the mare into a gallop, but it was no match for war-trained horses. Within minutes, 6 riders in black and silver livery surrounded her, cutting off every escape. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scarred cheek and captain's knot on his shoulder, raised a gloved hand. Helena of Willow Vale, he called, voice carrying over the wind. By order of His Majesty King Hugo, you are to return to the palace under royal protection. She reined in hard, the mare sliding on icy gravel. Protection or arrest? The captain's expression remained neutral. His Majesty's word is protection. Refuse, and we are authorized to use force. Helena's mind reeled. She could fight. Her knife was sharp, her reflexes honed by years alone on dangerous roads, but 6 against 1 was suicide. And somewhere beneath the fear and fury, the pendant pulsed warmly against her thigh, as if approving the direction they were taking her. She took a deep breath. Lead on, then. They flanked her the entire ride back. No one spoke. The palace gates opened without question, and they escorted her not through the servants' passages this time, but the main courtyard, past staring guards, whispering maids, and courtiers who fell silent as she passed. She kept her hood up, chin high, refusing to shrink. They delivered her to a private solar on the eastern wing, smaller than the king's chambers, but no less luxurious. Tapestries of ancient hunts lined the walls. A fire roared in the hearth. The captain bowed once and withdrew, closing the heavy oak doors behind him. She was alone for perhaps 10 heartbeats before they opened again. Hugo stepped inside, still in riding leathers, cloak dusted with snow. His golden hair was wind-tossed, his amber eyes blazing with something raw. Relief, fury, hunger, all tangled together. He shut the door with deliberate force and crossed to her. You ran, he said. You told me to go. Helena lifted her chin. I followed orders. His jaw tightened. I told you to forget, not to vanish into the wilds where anyone could cut your throat. I've survived worse than assassins. She met his gaze without flinching. And I still don't have Moonbloom. The child in my village. He's safe. Hugo cut her off. I sent riders north at dawn with 3 full sacks of the herb. Helena blinked, the fight draining out of her for a moment. You did? I gave my word I'd help you. He stepped closer. I keep my promises, Helena, even when you don't remember them. The air between them thickened. She could feel the pendant burning against her skin again, a steady throb that echoed in her chest. Then tell me the truth. All of it. No more evasions. Hugo studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the 2 chairs by the fire. She sat. He remained standing, one hand braced on the mantel as though he needed the distance. The night we met wasn't chance. You walked into that tavern looking for Moonbloom. I was there undercover because I'd heard the same rumors you had. Someone hoarding the herb to weaken my border packs. I wanted names. You gave them without hesitation, without fear. And the moment our eyes met, he exhaled sharply. My wolf went still for the first time in years, like he'd finally found the thing he'd been pacing for. I felt it in my chest, in my blood. It's the mate bond. Helena's breath caught. Mate bond. She'd heard the stories, fated pairs, unbreakable connections, but they were rare, almost mythical among common folk. You're saying we're mates? Hugo didn't answer with words. He reached out instead, slow, deliberate, and brushed the back of his knuckles along her jaw. The contact was featherlight, barely there, but the moment skin met skin, the solar room vanished. Helena was back in the tavern booth, but this time she wasn't seeing it from her own eyes. She felt Hugo's heartbeat pounding against his ribs, felt the raw surge of his wolf rising like a tide the instant their gazes locked across the smoky room. Mine. She felt his struggle, the way his fingers tightened around his beer mug until the metal groaned, the way he forced himself to look away only to snap back to her face. Larissa's alliance holds the East. The Council will never accept this. His kingly mind was ice-sharp, listing every political reason to walk away. But beneath it, insistent, his wolf pressed closer to the surface, tail low, ears forward, eyes fixed on her like she was the only star in his sky. She smells like home, the wolf whispered through him, voice low and aching, like the meadow where we used to run as pups. She's ours. Let me go to her, just once, just to breathe her in. Then the memory shifted, faster, hotter. They were already moving through shadowed corridors, his hand locked around hers, pulling her toward the hidden stair. Every step was war, duty screaming in his head, the bond countering louder. He stopped her in a narrow alcove, pressed her against cold stone, mouth crashing down on hers. She tasted salt and wine and desperation on his tongue. I can't, he growled against her lips, even as his hands slid under her skirts, lifting, pinning. I shouldn't. Then stop, she whispered back, her own voice, fierce, challenging. But her fingers were already in his hair, tugging him closer. He didn't stop. The memory surged forward in flashes, his teeth grazing her throat, her nails raking his shoulders, the moment he lifted her against the wall and drove into her with a broken sound that was half growl, half plea. She felt his awe, his terror, his absolute surrender, felt the exact second he reached into his tunic, pulled the silver wolf pendant free, and pressed it into her palm while still buried inside her. Take it, his wolf begged through him, soft and fervent. Keep it against your heart. Even if tomorrow I forget your name, keep this piece of us, so I can find you again, so I can come home. Then darkness, swift, chemical, the poison flooding in like ink through water. His vision blurred, her name slipped from his mind like sand. The bond snapped tight but didn't break. The memory dissolved. Helena staggered. Hugo caught her elbows, steadying them both. His breathing was ragged, eyes molten gold. "That was you," she whispered. He nodded once, throat working. The bonds tearing the weave apart, piece by piece. She stared up at him, chest rising and falling fast. "You fought so hard." "I lost." His voice cracked on the word. "And I've been losing every day since." Helena's throat tightened. "So what now?" Before she could respond, a knock shattered the moment. Sharp, urgent. Hugo released her, crossed to the door, cracked it open. The young page's whisper reached her. Trouble in the council chamber. "Stay here," he told her. "Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." He left without another word. The solar felt colder without him. Helena paced, thoughts racing. Mate bond, poison, Larissa's threats. It was too much, too fast. She sank into the chair by the fire, pulling the pendant free. It glowed faintly now, the rune pulsing like a second heartbeat. She heard the soft click of a latch. A maid entered. Young, nervous, carrying a silver tray with a teapot and cup. "His Majesty said you might be thirsty after your journey, my lady. It's chamomile. Calming." Something in the girl's eyes, too wide, too glassy, set Helena's instincts on fire. She stood slowly. "You can leave it with me." The maid curtsied and backed out. Helena waited until the door closed, then approached the tray. The tea steamed gently. She leaned close, inhaling. A faint, bitter undertone. Nightshade. Subtle, but unmistakable. Her blood ran cold. She knocked the pot over, tea hissing across the hearthstones. Then the door burst open again. Larissa stood framed in the doorway, flanked by 2 guards in unmarked livery. Her smile was triumphant. "You should have drunk it," she said. "Would have been cleaner." Helena backed toward the window, hand on her knife. "Hugo will kill you for this." "Only if he finds you alive." Larissa stepped inside, guards closing the door behind her. "He's occupied. A small distraction in the council chamber. Enough time for me to finish what the tea started." One guard drew a short blade. The other advanced. Helena lunged for the poker by the hearth, better than nothing, but the first guard was faster. He grabbed her wrist, twisting until the knife clattered away. She drove her elbow into his throat. He staggered, choking. Larissa's laugh cut the air, sharp and delighted. "Feisty. I see why he likes you." The second guard seized Helena from behind, arm around her throat. She clawed at him, gasping, vision spotting. That's when the doors exploded inward with a crack that shook the walls. Hugo stormed through like an avalanche, eyes blazing gold, wolf teeth already lengthening. He moved in a blur, slamming the first guard into the wall with bone-crunching force, ripping the second off Helena with a snarl that shook the tapestries. Larissa backed away, face paling. "Hugo!" He didn't glance at her. His gaze snapped to Helena. She was on her knees, coughing violently, one hand braced on the floor, the other clutching her bruised throat. Blood flecked her lips from where she'd bitten her tongue. He reached her in 2 strides, hands gentle despite the blood on his knuckles. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, voice hoarse. "Tea. Poisoned." His eyes flicked to the spilled pot, the dark stains spreading across the hearthstones. When he looked back at Larissa, the gentleness vanished. What remained was pure, lethal calm, even as Larissa drew a thin dagger from her sleeve. "How dare you?" Hugo snarled. Larissa's composure cracked. "You were supposed to forget her. The council needs stability. My family's armies, my eastern passes. She's nothing in the grand scheme of things." Hugo advanced slowly, carefully. "She's everything." Larissa lunged, not at him, but at Helena. Hugo intercepted, twisting her wrist until the dagger fell. He shoved her against the wall, forearm across, her throat. "You poisoned the wine. You tried to kill my mate." Larissa gasped. "I only wove the memory silk. The rest wasn't me." Hugo's grip tightened. "Who then?" Larissa's eyes darted to the door, then back. "Halo," she whispered. "He wanted the throne, planned to kill you after the wedding, frame me, rule through a puppet heir. I was merely useful." Hugo went still. Then slowly he released her. She slumped, coughing. "Guards," he called. The original captain appeared instantly. "Take Lady Larissa to the lower cells. No visitors, no contact." As they dragged her away, Hugo turned back to Helena. Blood streaked his cheek in a thin, dark line, his own, from the shallow nick Larissa's dagger had left during the scuffle. He lifted a hand to wipe it away, but the moment his fingers brushed the cut, his expression changed. A flicker, barely there. Then his pupils blew wide. He froze mid-motion. The blood on his fingertips wasn't just red anymore. It gleamed with an oily, unnatural sheen under the firelight. A faint, sickly sweet scent drifted up, bitter almonds mixed with rotting flowers. That wasn't just any blade. It was poisoned. Hugo's knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the mantel, knuckles whitening, but the tremor started in his hand and raced up his arm like wildfire. Veins stood out against his skin, first pale, then darkening to ugly black threads spidering outward from the wound. The poison was moving fast, too fast, racing through open blood instead of swallowed tea. "Hugo?" Helena called out. He tried to straighten, but failed. His breath came in short, wet gasps. "Helena, get back." Helena lunged forward as he dropped to one knee, catching him under the arms before his face hit the stone. His weight nearly dragged her down, heavy, solid, suddenly burning hot against her. Sweat beaded on his forehead in seconds. His skin felt feverish, clammy. "Stay with me," she said, voice cracking. She lowered him to the floor as gently as she could, his back against the leg of the heavy oak table. Helena's hands flew to the wound on his cheek first, small but open, weeping black-tinged blood. Then lower, where he'd pressed his palm to his side during the fight. Larissa's dagger had grazed there too, deeper than she'd realized. The fabric of his shirt was soaked dark, clinging to skin that looked bruised from the inside out. "No," Helena whispered. "No, no, no." She tore his shirt wider with shaking hands. The chest wound was worse, jagged, already rimmed in necrotic gray, poison eating inward. Her healer's instincts surged. She pressed both hands to the wound, reaching for the old blood magic she'd never fully understood, the part of her that closed wounds, cooled fevers, sensed life flickering. But this time it felt different, stronger. The pendant flared hot against her chest, and something answered from Hugo's side, a golden thread connecting them, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. The bond. She poured everything into it, her magic, her fear, her stubborn refusal to lose him now that she'd found him. Light bloomed under her palms, soft gold, warm as sunlight. The poison retreated, black veins fading. Slowly, painfully, the wound nick closed, leaving only a thin pink line. Hugo gasped, eyes snapping open. Amber bled to gold, then back. "Helena." Tears burned her eyes. "Don't ever do that again." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheeks. I'd take 1,000 blades for you. Then he kissed her. Not the hazy, poisoned fragments of their lost night. This was real, fierce, desperate, full of everything they'd both been denying. His mouth claimed hers like a vow. She kissed him back with equal hunger, hands fisting in his torn shirt. The bond roared to life between them. Memories flooded in, not hers alone, but theirs. The tavern laughter, the garden whispers, the bed where he'd growled her name and she'd answered with his. Every touch, every promise, every stolen breath. When they broke apart, Hugo whispered against her lips. I remember everything. The way you laughed when I tried to intimidate you. The way you said, I'm not yours to claim, right before you pulled me closer. Helena laughed shakily. I was always a bad liar. He smiled. I know. Then his expression sobered. Halo, my uncle. If Larissa's telling the truth. Helena tightened her grip on him. Then we face him together. Hugo nodded, rising slowly, pulling her with him. The bond hummed between them, strong, certain, alive. And somewhere in the palace depths, Lord Halo felt the first shiver of something ancient waking up to hunt him. The throne hall was lit like a battlefield at dusk, torches spitting in iron sconces, long shadows clawing across marble floors. Banners of the royal wolf hung limp in the still air. The council had been summoned under the guise of an emergency audience. Every lord and lady who mattered stood in uneasy rows, murmuring. No one knew why they had been called at this hour. No one knew Larissa had been freed from the cells an hour earlier, a shadow slipping through corridors Halo controlled. Hugo entered first, Helena at his side. Not hidden, not cloaked. She wore a simple blue gown one of the maids had pressed on her, but she walked with her chin up, storm-gray eyes scanning faces. Hugo's hand rested lightly at the small of her back, possessive, protective, public. The bond thrummed between them, steady as a second heartbeat. The hall fell silent. At the far end, on the raised dais, Lord Halo waited. Tall, silver-haired, impeccable in black velvet. His smile was polite, practiced. Behind him, 2 of his personal guards stood at rigid attention. Hugo stopped at the foot of the dais steps, his voice carried without raising. Uncle, you requested this audience. Speak. Halo inclined his head. Your Majesty, the court is unsettled. Rumors of a common healer in your chambers, a betrothed lady imprisoned without trial. The Eastern Alliance teeters. The people need clarity. Helena felt Hugo's wolf stir, low, dangerous. Clarity, Hugo repeated. Very well. He lifted his hand. Helena placed hers in it, their fingers laced. The pendant at her throat flared once, bright, golden, and the bond surged. Helena felt Hugo's alpha power flowing into her like a river of molten gold, meeting the old blood magic that had always simmered quietly in her veins. The ancient healer rites her mother had whispered about, the kind that could bind oaths, reveal hidden truths, project echoes of betrayal when the blood was strong enough, woke fully for the first time. Light bloomed between their joined hands, soft at first, then sharp and undeniable. A shimmering veil rose like heat from sun-baked stone. Images formed in the air above the dais, vivid, 3-dimensional, impossible to dismiss as trickery. The tavern booth, Helena's bold approach, Hugo's wolf awakening in awe. The alcove kiss, desperate, claiming. The bed, his teeth at her throat, her name on his lips, the pendant pressed into her palm with trembling reverence. Then the poison flooding in, wine turning black in goblets, memory silk weaving through minds like spider thread. Larissa's laughter as she watched from the shadows, Halo's voice cold and clear. Make him forget her. After the wedding, the throne will be mine. I will kill him quietly. The puppet heir will be easy to control. Gasps ripped through the hall. Lords stepped back. Ladies clutched jewels at their throats. Halo's face drained of color. Illusion, he snapped. Witchcraft. She's bewitched him. Hugo's voice cut through the hall. This is no illusion. This is truth, shared through the mate bond, witnessed by every soul here. The projection shifted. Helena's healing hands on, Hugo's poisoned wound, light pouring from her palms, black veins retreating. The court watched as the king bled for her, saw her save him, saw the bond flare between them. Helena's voice rang out, clear and steady. Lord Halo poisoned the wine. Larissa wove the memory silk at his command. They hoarded moonbloom to weaken the border pacts. Your pacts, my lords. They planned regicide, but they failed. Murmurs turned to shouts. Guards shifted uneasily. Halo's hand dropped to his belt, where a dagger hilt glinted. Then Larissa stepped from behind a pillar at the side of the dais, freed, armed, eyes wild. She held a short, curved blade already drawn. We have to think of the greater good, she hissed. King Hugo will never sit secure with a common witch at his side. The throne hall had become a powder keg, torches guttering, air thick with the scent of fear and steel. Every lord and lady stood frozen in their ranks, breath held, as the projected memories faded like dying embers. Hugo and Helena stood at the foot of the steps, hands still linked, the bond between them a live wire. The golden light of their shared power dimmed, but the hall's silence was deafening. Every eye was on them. Every heart waited for the next move. Halo broke first. He laughed, low, bitter, the sound scraping like a blade on stone. You think visions win wars, Hugo? He stepped forward, drawing a long, black-handled dagger from beneath his cloak. The blade shimmered with an oily sheen, poisoned, unmistakable. The court has seen your little light show. Now watch what real power looks like. He lunged first at Hugo, then changed course last minute and went for Helena. Hugo roared and moved, alpha speed blurring his form, but Halo was closer, trajectory perfect. Helena twisted, raising her arm instinctively. The dagger sliced deep across her ribs, hot agony exploding outward. Blood bloomed dark across her gown, soaking through in seconds. She staggered, breath punched from her lungs. Hugo collided with Halo like a battering ram, shoulder to chest, claws raking. They crashed sideways into the dais steps. Stone cracked. Halo's dagger flew from his grip, skittering across marble. Hugo pinned him, knee on his throat, fangs fully descended, eyes pure molten gold. But Larissa was already moving. She darted from the side, silent, vicious, blade flashing toward Helena's exposed back while Hugo was occupied. Helena heard the whisper of air behind her. She spun, too slow. The blade punched into her lower back, shallow, but the poison was immediate. Black fire raced through her veins like liquid night. She dropped to one knee, hand flying to the wound, blood slicking her fingers. Vision tunneled. The bond flickered, Hugo's pain slamming into her like a second strike. The hall erupted. Guards loyal to Halo surged forward, 4 of them, swords drawn. The rest hesitated, torn between oaths and the carnage unfolding. Shouts rang out. Steel clashed. Hugo felt Helena's agony through the bond, sharp, searing, and it tore a snarl from his throat that shook the banners. He slammed Halo's head against the step once, hard enough to daze, then spun toward her. Larissa was already on Helena again, blade raised for the killing stroke. Helena, bleeding, vision graying, forced herself upright on sheer will. The pendant at her throat flared, hot enough to scorch skin. She reached for the bond with everything she had left. Golden light exploded outward. Not gentle this time, but wild, desperate. It poured from her chest into Hugo, into the air around them. She felt his alpha strength flood her, raw, furious, protective. She channeled it through her old blood magic, not to heal herself, but to strike. Light lashed out like whips of sunlight. One tendril wrapped Larissa's wrist, snapping bone with an audible crack. The blade clattered away. Another coiled around her throat, not choking, but immobilizing. Larissa dropped to her knees, gasping, tears streaming, body locked rigid. Hugo reached Helena in the same heartbeat. He caught her as her legs gave out completely, lowering her to the marble. Blood pooled beneath her, dark, spreading fast. His hands pressed over the wounds, claws retracting, voice breaking. Helena, stay with me. Look at me. Hugo felt the bond fraying, Helena's heartbeat stuttering, poison chewing deeper into her blood. Panic clawed up his throat. Her blood welled between his fingers, hot and slick. No, he growled, voice cracking into something animal. You cannot leave me. Not like this. He pressed harder, palms shaking. The bond was still there, golden thread thin and flickering, but it wasn't enough on its own. The poison was too deep, too fast. He felt it in his own veins now, shared, burning, like swallowing fire. His wolf surged forward, not in rage, but in raw, terrified need. Hold her. Keep her. The animal inside him didn't care about crowns or courts. It only knew the scent of her blood, the slowing rhythm of her heart. Hugo leaned over her, forehead pressed to hers, breath ragged. Helena, feel me. Take what I have. He forced the bond wider, pouring alpha strength through it like blood from an open vein. Not gentle magic, not clean light, just pure, brutal will. Dominance that could bend armies, fury that could tear stone, devotion that had waited years in silence. It hurt. Gods, it hurt, like ripping his own soul open to feed hers. Golden light sparked between their skin, jagged, unsteady. It sank into her wounds, slow and reluctant. Black veins shrank, but not cleanly. They retreated in fits, leaving raw, angry red tracks. The gash on her ribs stopped gushing but stayed open, edges inflamed. The shoulder wound sealed to a weeping slit. Helena gasped, short, pained. Her fingers dug into his arms. It burns. I know, he rasped, but I'm not letting go. The light pulsed once, more, fainter now, exhausted, then dimmed. The worst of the poison was gone, burned out by sheer force, but she was far from healed. Her breathing was shallow, labored. She needed healers, time, rest. Hugo lifted his head. The hall watched, silent, stunned. Halo pinned and bleeding. Larissa still frozen in golden chains, guards frozen mid-motion. He gathered Helena closer, careful, reverent, lifting her into his arms despite the blood slicking his chest. She curled against him, head on his shoulder, too weak to stand. His voice carried, hoarse, unbreakable. This is my mate. He turned slowly so every face could see her, pale, bloodied, eyes half-lidded but fierce. Helena of Willow Vale. She took blades meant for me. She burned poison from my blood when I could not. She saved my life, my throne, my soul. She is my queen. He looked down at her, eyes raw, glistening. Any man or woman who questions her place questions me, and I will answer with fang and claw. Silence held for a heartbeat. Then the First Lord dropped to one knee, then another. The waves spread, lords, ladies, guards, kneeling in the blood-streaked hall. Hugo carried her out, strong arms, steady steps, through corridors to their chambers. Maids and healers rushed forward. Help her, he said, voice low, commanding but cracking at the edges. Everything she needs, now. They laid her on clean sheets. Healers worked quickly, cleaning, stitching, dosing with antidotes and pain drafts. Outside, snow began to fall softly, muffling the palace in hush. Inside their chambers, firelight played across the walls, catching on the fresh bandages wrapped around Helena's ribs and shoulder. The healers had left only minutes ago, promising she would mend, though the scars would stay, thin silver lines etched by poison and steel. Hugo hadn't moved from her side. He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his blood-streaked leathers, one hand wrapped around hers, thumb tracing slow circles over her knuckles as if reassuring himself she was real. Helena shifted, wincing, and he was instantly alert, leaning closer, free hand hovering near her ribs as though he could absorb the pain through touch alone. "Stop fussing," she murmured, voice hoarse but fond. "I'm not made of glass." "You're made of stubbornness," he countered quietly. "And right now you're bleeding on my sheets. Let me fuss." She gave a small, tired laugh that turned into a cough. He helped her sit up a fraction, propping pillows behind her back with careful hands. When she was settled, he didn't pull away. He simply stayed close, forehead resting lightly against hers, eyes closed, breathing her in. "You scared me," he whispered. She gave a weak smile. "I guess you're stuck with me now. We won, didn't we?" He turned his face into her palm, pressing a kiss to the center. "Because of you. You risked your life out there, Helena. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking I couldn't watch you die." Her thumb brushed the faint scar on his cheek, the one from Larissa's dagger, already healing faster than it should. "Not when I'd only just remembered how it felt to be yours. You've always been mine, even when I forgot." He leaned in and kissed her temple, slow, careful, tasting of salt and relief. When he pulled back, he whispered, "Rest. I'll guard the door myself." She tugged him closer instead. "Stay with me." So he did. Months later, they rode alone. No escort, no banners, just the two of them and the quiet crunch of hooves on fresh snow. Hugo on his black stallion, Helena on the bay mare he'd given her that first desperate dawn. She sat straighter now, scars hidden beneath a thick wool cloak lined with fox fur. They reached Willow Vale as the sun dipped low, painting the village gold against white. Roofs once sagging were newly thatched. Chimneys smoked steadily. Children darted between. Houses, cheeks flushed, laughter sharp in the crisp air. The black vein fever was gone. Moonbloom's gift, carried north by Hugo's riders that very first morning. Helena was still scanning the square when she heard it. "Helena." Pip came barreling out from between two cottages at full speed, boots unlaced, dark hair sticking up at every angle, a smear of what was hopefully jam across his chin. He was bigger than she remembered, rounder in the cheeks, stronger in the legs, and he was running like the snow wasn't even there. He skidded to a halt 3 feet from her horse, suddenly aware of the enormous black stallion and the king sitting on it. His brown eyes went very wide. A mittened hand came up to wipe the jam from his chin with the dignity of someone who had just noticed it was there. Helena was off her horse before he could decide whether to be scared. She knelt in the snow and opened her arms. "Pip." That was all it took. He crashed into her, small body colliding with hers, arms wrapping tight around her neck. She held him close, chin resting on his dark hair, tears freezing on her lashes. He smelled of wood smoke and pine, and the faint sweetness of childhood. "You came back," he whispered fiercely into her shoulder. "I told Mama you would. She said maybe. I said no. She promised." Helena pulled back just enough to look at his face, rosy-cheeked, jam-smeared, eyes shining. "I promised," she confirmed softly, and kissed his forehead. He let her hold him for another long moment, which for a 7-year-old boy was the most generous gift he could give. Then he pulled back with great seriousness, bottom lip wobbling only slightly. "Thank you," he said quietly, like he'd been practicing it. "For the moon bloom, for not forgetting us." Helena tucked a strand of wild dark hair behind his ear, the way she had when he was too fevered to notice. "I could never forget you, Pip. Not ever." Hugo dismounted behind her, crouching low so he was eye level with the boy. He rested a hand on Pip's small shoulder, gentle, steady, nothing like the king who'd once terrified courts. "You're strong," Hugo said, "like your healer." Pip looked up at him, wide-eyed, awed, a little scared. "You're the king," he said in a very small voice. Hugo's mouth curved. "I'm her mate." His gaze slid to Helena, softening. "And soon, father to another." Pip's eyes went perfectly round. He looked at Helena's belly, then back at Hugo, then at the belly again, with the intense focus of a child doing very important calculations. "So, the baby will be a prince? Or a princess," Helena said. Pip considered this with enormous gravity. Then, apparently satisfied, he nodded once, as though he had personally approved the arrangement. Helena laughed, soft and full, tears finally spilling over. She pulled him close one last time. "Keep growing strong. Eat everything your mother puts in front of you. And when we come back next winter, I want to see how tall you've gotten." He nodded fiercely, then bolted, because across the square his mother was calling from a doorway, waving shyly at the king and queen with flour-dusted hands. Helena watched him go, hand resting on her belly. Hugo came up behind her, arms sliding around her waist, chin dropping to her shoulder. "He's alive because of you," Hugo murmured against her temple. "He's alive because we both kept fighting," she corrected. They mounted again and rode out as dusk deepened, snow swirling around them. Later, in the small cabin they'd claimed on the edge of the pine forest, far from the palace just for a week, Hugo built the fire while Helena sat wrapped in thick furs on the wide bench by the hearth. He settled behind her, long legs bracketing hers, arms coming around her waist. His chin rested on her shoulder, one hand splayed over the small swell of her belly. The bond thrummed, 3 heartbeats now, hers, his, and the tiny, perfect rhythm of their child. "She's warm," his wolf observed, with great satisfaction. "She smells like ours. Tell her again." Hugo pressed his smile into her hair. "You're warm." Helena laughed. "That's what you're thinking about right now? My wolf has simple priorities. Tell her she's beautiful," the wolf added, "and that her neck looks particularly—" "Stop," Hugo muttered quietly. Helena tilted her head, amused. "Was that him? He's enthusiastic, about everything." Hugo pulled her closer, mouth brushing her temple. "Ignore him." Hugo's fingers drifted upward, tracing the thin silver scar that curved along her ribs. "These are proof you chose me," he said quietly, "even when it cost you." Helena leaned back into his warmth, tilting her head so her cheek brushed his. He pressed a kiss to the scar on her shoulder. "I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of that first night we almost forgot, of every scar you carry because of me." She caught his hand, lacing their fingers together over the curve where their future grew. "You already are. You carried me out of that hall like I was the only thing that mattered." "That's because you are," he said simply. She smiled, soft, tired but full of light. "And now there's 3 of us. Our child will be a shifter, Hugo. It gives me some anxiety, wondering what it will feel like when they first shift, when they run faster than I ever could." Hugo's chest rumbled with a low, contented sound. half laugh, half wolf. They'll have your courage, your stubborn heart, and when they shift for the first time, I'll be there, holding your hand while we watch them chase snowflakes on 4 paws. He nuzzled her neck, warm breath against her skin. We'll teach them everything: how to run, how to heal, how to love without fear. The baby kicked, gentle, insistent, as though in agreement. You're going to be unbearably protective, aren't you? Unbearably, he agreed. My wolf is already planning how to build a den around this cabin and never let either of you out of sight. She is carrying our pup, his wolf said with great urgency. She must be protected. New walls. Better walls. Also, have you noticed how beautiful she looks in firelight? Hugo, how lucky are we? They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, listening to the crackle of the hearth and the soft, steady rhythm of 3 heartbeats. And for the first time in years, the kingdom, and their little corner of it, slept easy. Where are you listening from? I love hearing your feedback, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people discover these stories.